primary ignition.
This is Star Wars.
Look out!
Core World News.
You may fire when ready.
From the bright center of the galaxy, I'm Grace Kondak, and you're listening to Core World News, your whole news service providing in-depth coverage of the latest stories developing in every sector of the galaxy. Welcome to another special presentation of Andor Candor. Now, we go live to the CWN newsroom to join your hosts, Ben and Grandt, for the review of Episode 8, NARKINA 5.
All right, thank you very much, Grex Kondak. Always a pleasure to have him around. Today, Adam is unable to make it to our floating space station. There are some closed hyperlanes, something. We'll get those opened up, and he'll be back with us soon. Thanks very much for joining us for another edition of Covering Andor, which is just super great. Starting off, highlights there. Actually, Grant, why don't you give us... Grant's doing summaries these days. He's been putting in the work and summarizing these things in full, and it's setting a good table for all of us.
A summary of Episode 8, NARKINA 5, confusingly enough.
What's NARKINA 5? Wait, what's NARKINA 5?
So, hear me out. You're going to find out in the first couple seconds here. Sentenced to 6 years in prison at the end of the last episode. Episode 8 begins with Cassian being forced onto an Imperial transport heading to NARKINA 5. Upon arriving at the partially underwater labor facility, Cassian is in for a shock when he learns about the nuanced disciplinary tactics employed there, such as tungsten steel floors used to electrocute prisoners for disobedience or lack of productivity.
It's shocking.
Tungstoid steel. Cassian is then assigned to a level and work table where he meets Supreme Floor Manager Kino Loy, played by genre film heavyweight and mocap pioneer Andy Serkis.
That's what they brought in Serkis for. Okay.
Each work table is tasked with building large three-pronged cogs. Both the voice chiming in over the prison intercom and Kino make it clear that productivity is key to winning this game of floor is lava. After this first harrowing shift, Cassian is shown his cell, more aptly his doorless alcove, complete with folding table, folding toilet, and food tube. At the Bureau of Standards on Coruscant, Cyril Karn is pulled out of his workstation and questioned by Dedra Marrow, who is concerned about the gaps in Blevins' report detailing the events that unfolded on Ferrix concerning the dead corpos, stolen Starpath unit, and Andor's escape with mysterious ally. Cyril offers what help he can in terms of identifying Cassian's accomplice. Recognizing Cyril's drive for rectifying his error, Deirdre gives him access to Blevins' report and then heads to ISB briefing room to make her case for drilling down on Ferrix to identify Cassian's ally, whom she has now assigned the moniker Axis. Dedra explains to the ISB higher-ups that she believes Axis is at the center of a coordinated rebel effort to steal Imperial equipment. Colonel Wolf Yularen and Major Partagas agree to Deidre's wish list to increase surveillance on Ferrix, and Dedra travels to the occupied city to continue her investigation. Embassy parties at Mon and Perrin's spacious penthouse are still all the rave as we catch up with Mon, Perrin, and Tay, enjoying Chandrillan cocktails aptly called squigs for the wriggling worm added to the drink before enjoyment. Leda stops into exclaim her disgust for the squigs, while other partygoers are thirsty for more. Tay informs Mon Mothma that the new banking regulations are making it difficult to withdraw funds, that the Empire is staffing more Imperial auditors. Mon Mothma even shares in a debate on the current political climate. The partygoers and Mon weigh in on Palpatine, the Public Order Resentencing Act, Imperial protection, etc. Back on NARKINA 5, it seems all hope is lost as inmates end their lives on the electrified floor, and defeated Andor walks circuitous walkways and viewports depicting other long skywalks with hundreds of other prisoners marching single file. A spark of hope emerges when Cassian sees two prisoners using sign language to communicate from separate walkways. In a brilliant graphic match cut, we jump 30 shifts later, and Cassian has learned to assimilate as a laborer. On Ferrix, Bix and Brasso tend to Marva in her cold hovel. Her health seems to be declining due to her fixation on the Imperial occupiers and acting out in the streets. Bix then goes to use the Rebel Whisper Network to contact Luthen, but Clay convinces Luthen not to answer. Luthen makes the hard choice to shut down the comm system, but with Dedra having increased surveillance on Ferrix, Bix is apprehended by stormtroopers in the streets the next day. Luthen's spaceship spears past Frame and into an endless starfield. He sets coordinates for Sagra Milo. What or better yet, who could be on Sagra Milo? It is none other than our favorite extremist, Saw Gerrera. Luthen hopes to offload some equipment on Saw Gerrera, but the rebel leader turns down the offer after Luthen makes a cutting remark about how he runs his operation. Back on Ferrix, Bix is brought to Dedra for interrogation while Cassian, in prison on Narkina 5, is unaware his friends are in danger.
Very good, Grant.
That was the episode. That was
when you say it like that, it's a lot of stuff. In my mind's eye, I was like, prison. They were in prison.
Yeah, there was a lot of prison, but
yeah,
again, beautiful weaving of the stories, like the character stories, all together there. Kind of broken into chunks for you in the summaries, but they're actually beautifully woven together, and the cuts are the really great juxtapositions in storytelling, I would say, especially with Cyril Karn and Andor. That feels very closely aligned in terms of their cutting between that and then Mon Mothma, Luthen, that sort of stuff feels like it's cut together.
I almost want to start with Cyril. Just he keeps doing all the things we expect him to do, and then keeps falling short. This was his moment in the sun, right? He was finally he finally, he was raising a flag. So you were totally right, Grant. You would guess that he was still searching on those computer terminals, and it turns out he was just like accusing him of random wrongdoings having to do with like his
apparently
resource discrepancy.
Yeah, he's messing with the purity of the oil in many different, I guess, departments that you could do that in, and I guess that's just the tool he's been using to search databases for Cassian, or to just flag him, raise alarm, and sort of whatever pops up is something he can go on as a lead.
Do you think he wanted to get ISB involved? Do you think he was raising a flag knowing that like ISB would look for him? Because he didn't look surprised to be, interviewed there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It felt like such a kind of like insular, event, and then now it's so macro. Like it seems like it's all important to the equipment is sort of now tied to the ISB's sort of main priorities, right? Is to figure out who's stealing this equipment, as well as sort of tighten security after Aldhani. And so it's interesting. Could he be doing that purposefully to get the attention of ISB? Maybe because more rebel activity is happening, and sort of what happened to him was treated as a kind of a rebel action. So yeah, maybe
it's unclear. It's unclear, right? Because it's like, how do we know how stupid like Cyril Karn is yet? Like, he's so earnest, that you think that he sort of knows what's going on. Was he just trying to be like, I'm just going to throw accusations at this guy to try and get him behind bars? Or was he like, stupid like a fox trying to get the attention of the real people chasing him so that he can be involved again? I don't know. It wasn't clear, which is kind of...
I think it's a personal vendetta. I think it's something that's just he holds at his core, and then he needs to rectify this wrong, that happened to him. And that's how he views the situation, is that he was in charge of security and protection for, the entire system and whatnot. And he sees this as an injustice. And so he's going after, Andor no matter what. So I think it's a sort of personal, interest for him.
Yeah, really, really fascinating, man. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's the tension is so high in this show all the time. I mean, you can't even like ever catch your breath. All these people are scrambling trying to find Cassian. Meanwhile, he is on the brink of death. He's already been captured, and is really in this really toxic situation. Yeah, shocking. I like how you work that into the it's really cool take on prison, like a new invention.
That was fascinating, honestly. Just the idea of the guards don't need weapons and that the floor is all electrified, and it seems like a terrible way to go, honestly, when you think about it, and just how frighteningly painful that would be to land on it. I can already see the scene where like someone lands with their face on the floor and Cassian turns the system on. Like I can already see that shot. Like we're getting that.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. What's also cool is you kind of see Cassian observing his surroundings and kind of like, I guess, picking up the kind of lay of the land in this prison. And so he can eventually, I hope, escape. And I think when he gets in there, he learns how they respond to sort of whatever, a tech glitch or an error. You see the guards sort of like fumbling around trying to get him to his level, but they have another glitch or mishap on another floor, and it's like it's requiring all this manpower, and so he's seeing how they move around their the guards in the prison right away. Then he's seeing how the work tables and how the workstations operate and all that stuff, and meeting Andy Serkis as Kino Loy. I mean, that was a huge surprise when I was watching it. I was like, whoa, is that the Andy Serkis?
Because we got a rumor that he was going to be in this, right?
I don't.
Or has he just been
I was
attached to like everything? I thought we got a
done
rumor.
So much directing work lately. I thought you would think he may have directed one or whatnot, but wow, like it's. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and directs something for season 2, given how much directing he's been doing recently. But yeah, just to see him acting and to see him as a kind of like, you know, in person rather than some sort of special effect makeup or anything like that is so cool. Like really like that.
A real tip of the cap to Andy Serkis, you know, by doing that. I mean, it's a relative bit part. I feel like he's been doing leading parts for years now. Leading roles, but I mean, yeah, he gets a lot of FaceTime, and you know,
I mean, it is an odd choice to cast him as the sort of prisoner in charge of the other prisoners, and sort of shouting at everyone, because Snoke did a lot of shouting. Like, I wonder if you gave him a role where he's kind of like you play down the sort of anger and aggression, and you play up some of his, I don't know, his more like idiosyncratic kind of I don't know, sort of like nebbish, you know, behaviors. I think that could be interesting, but instead it's just
straight role. Yeah. Desperate. Yeah. Just like he's like almost to the finish line, and you can feel he's like, let's just finish strong. I only have, 3/4 of a year. I did the math. It was like 2,189 days, and that like whatever the number was divided perfectly into 6 years. So 365 day year. So it's just like standard Earth years with the way they decided to go with that. But yeah.
NARKINA 5, you mean?
Yeah, NARKINA 5. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, who knows what it is, but I think that's like standard years, because they talk about years and months and days and weeks, and I'm like, isn't everything relative to, like, you can't think about that in Star Wars. It just doesn't. Yeah. Time is not relative.
And then we meet all the guys at his work table.
Yeah.
Fun names. Melshi's there from Rogue One. He's a soldier in Rogue One. He's actually part of Cassian's work table.
No kidding.
Yes.
Is he kind of the tall stoic one that tells him like the one we're only here for 2 days?
Cassian later and keeps telling him that their sentences don't matter and the Empire use them for, you know, as long as they want and all that sort of stuff. And then, which is a fascinating scene because it's so interesting, because that's when Andy Serkis comes and breaks it up.
Yeah.
And Andy Serkis then, Kino Loy, I'm sorry, his character, then says, well, I forget, he says something about like surviving or like productivity, or like something about.
It was like, just a generic break it up focus, like do your thing.
Comment. That was a fun exchange, because to me it was like, is Andy Serkis possibly good too? Is he also part of this rebellion? Like, does he hate this system just as much as these guys? Like, I wonder. There's like little bits where I don't really know, like much like Skeen, like there's no real tells for what Kino Loy is all about or what he believes just yet.
Yeah.
I don't think we know. I think that's purposeful, and I think that's going to be a fun turn.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I mean, you don't cast Andy Serkis unless there's some more development, right? Probably.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot more with him.
Cool.
That was fantastic.
I think this is kind of turning into The Wire a little bit. I got a lot of Wire vibes from this episode.
Oh, yeah.
One, because of, you know, the prison stuff, and then also that Deidre's trying to get wiretaps. And they talk about like her applying for wiretap. I'm like, is this The Wire? Like, what's going on? But I'm rooting for the wrong team now. Like,
yeah, she wants to increase surveillance on Ferrix, and she wants to, and that's exactly what we see in this episode.
Yeah,
basically, Bix goes to use that same comm system she's used in the earlier episodes, but this time they don't answer. But because of the tap, because of the bug, like Dedra, I'm sure, could zero in on the Bix used the system. If there was a call sent out from here, you know, like they were using, it was like level 9, like spectrum, like spectrographic sort of like surveillance. I was like, okay, so they're probably probably all of the different wavelengths and frequencies. They're probably just doing probably the scanning for everything, right? So
yeah, and they caught it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's frightening now that we'll see the full weight of the ISB coming down on this thing. And Deidre is such a great character. We get to see her interrogate Cyril Karn, and I really thought that conversation was going to go. I thought, he was going to say all these things about how the report was messed up, and she was going to overreact and bring him into the fold. And she did not do that. She was just like, she's like, okay, you're a Yutz. You've got nothing of value. You never saw this. Never bring it up again. Goodbye. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, but I also think she gave him an in to the graces of the Empire by saying, don't raise alarm again, or it won't be me you're talking to, which is like, so there's a chance that she could reach out to him again, as long as he stops flagging casting Andor and he, behaves on the job. So that's interesting. And that makes me feel like Karn is one step closer to entering the Empire. And so that's fun. Like, he's a character I'd like to see sort of like really crumble under the corruption, because I don't think he really has understood the cruelty involved with what they do just yet. Especially with Dedra kind of revealing how sinister she is in terms of interrogating people and having Bix. Like, this is really the big turn for Dedra. Like, if you were really rooting for Dedra before this episode, I think this is the episode where you're like, oh wow, she really is just a fascist monster. Yeah. So. Yeah,
definitely green guy, green hood guy from the green team barracks, like, I love that dude, him and his son, man. Like, I'm bonded to, like, they're family at this point. And then, they just beat the heck out of him and leave him there for Bix to see on the way in. That was brutal.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. The Deidre stuff. I wonder, I wonder what she's doing. We'll see how it goes there. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, we saw. So, I mean, so early on, we get Cassian in the prison. We get a lot of prison, like you said. I mean, it definitely feels like The Wire, or it feels like Oz, or it feels like any prison show you've seen before, where it's just a lot of prison, a lot of just seeing how the prison works, seeing the power structure, the power dynamics, all that stuff. Which it's cool because we're learning the technology, we're learning the habits. It's all set up for what seems to be a prison break arc. I can't wait to see how that unfolds. That'll be fun.
It could be next week, right? If we're going in 3-episode arcs, but unless they save it for later. But I feel
it'll be one more episode, and then I think the break. Yeah. Just so I think 7 was sort of a kind of a
turnaround episode,
in transit, sort of like inter episode to explore everyone and all their different branching paths. But this one's kind of more focused on this new arc, I think, of the prison break, and also the idea of new characters being introduced with Saw and Luthen. We'll talk about that at the end. But I guess where we're at in the conversation is the dinner party at Mon and Perrin's. I mean, this is a reoccurring sort of location. We are always at these little events that they're hosting, and this one was really fun because we got to hear all these sort of politicians in a circle talk about Palpatine, talk about the Public Order Resentencing Act, talk about it being a dangerous time in the galaxy, talking about rebel activity, talking about how much protection is too much, and when is it authoritarian and a police state? It's kind of like it was fascinating. I really liked that sort of conversation.
I was going to say, this was exactly the stuff that I know you were hoping for. And me too, like real politics. It's like people like at that level discussing where, what the direction of it is. What is it like? Is it okay that we're in an empire? I don't think it's so bad.
It's like
we're all safe. What's wrong with order? Like,
I know, I'm surprised. It's so fascinating how sort of the Jedi were quickly dispatched and then covered up and by the Empire, because you'd think they'd be in the conversation still. Like, the Jedi did right by my brother when they negotiated all this cattle back to him, when they were stolen by some warlord somewhere in the galaxy, and like they were good. I don't know, I don't believe they were wrong or felt they would even try to assassinate the Chancellor. That doesn't sound like the Jedi to me. Like, you don't. It's funny how that discourse is absent It's
Yeah.
Again, this show's not going there, and I get that, and it's fine. I'm just they were a big kind of body within the political system.
I think I get the
don't get it,
sense that like when the Jedi were all like executed, it was like you either
we don't
believed
talk
in the
about Jedi
cause.
anymore.
Yeah, it's either like we don't talk about Jedi anymore, like okay, or it's like yeah, the Jedi rebelled, like, and people in the know,
Yeah.
they'd probably be considered a minority voice, but they're probably like, yeah, I'm sure, that didn't make any sense, and I'm not convinced that's what happened, because
Yeah,
it's so vague. It was like such a vague announcement, and like one sentence, and it was like, so we had to condemn all these peacekeepers to death, and it was like, wait, what? Yeah.
I mean, is it also strange that their leader is like shrouded in robes and sort of like
Dark black robes with a shriveled
ghoulish
face. Yeah.
like
light
cackles that like is insidious. Like it's funny that no one's really, because again, a nice way to circumvent that sort of feeling that a lot of us are having about the show, about how ridiculous it is that Wolf Yularen like answers to Palpatine and treats him with like the utmost respect, when it's like at the end of the day it's just it's just a sinister sort of like evil sorcerer. It's kind of a strange feeling, and so a way to circumvent that would be to have him show up at a dinner party, to have like his party kind of like speak for themselves and kind of like see what that means, and maybe see how some of like the religion, like at the Sith sort of teachings, how that sort of like is built into his administration, and how there's like the cultists or the acolytes of beyond around him, and how those people are treated by higher ups in intelligence and stuff like that, and like seeing some of that mystical stuff, because I think you need it. I think you need it at this point. I think it's part of the political machination, and so I think it's missing from the political discussion. And so I would argue that a little bit of mysticism needs to be at the top, just to show you what it looks like to have church running state, and what that, like, a little bit, just to show it. I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. It's kind of what's happening, when you get down to the nitty gritty. Yet it's all off screen, which is fine, but it's interesting.
That might be season 2 stuff where we start seeing they're really slow playing this like elevation through the hierarchy of the Empire, and but I think, I mean, the ceiling is Palpatine, right?
Yeah.
And even if we got into his inner circle, we already heard a whisper about Sly Moore. I can't believe we've 8 episodes in, we've seen like 4 dinner parties at Mon Mothma's house, but we didn't get the dinner party with Sly.
You know what we need? We need someone to talk dissent about the Empire and then get taken out like the next day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, so that's what Lutheran Trail's all about.
Like, that's like some Michael Clayton stuff right there.
Yeah.
It's like,
it is.
What happened? He fell off his balcony?
Oh, yeah. A good defenestration. That's what we need. It's a great word. I mean, and that's what Lutheran Rail wants that to happen. He's trying to get that to happen.
I think, yes. Yeah.
He's like,
I think my favorite line from the episode, we'll do a roundup at the end, but
yeah,
I think it's oppression breeds rebellion, which is like, it's so true. Yeah. Like, the worse these systems are, the more people are going to want to revolt. And it's, the tighter you make your fist, the more systems will slip through your grasp, right? Yeah. It's like, he wants them to, it's the autocracy is happening too slowly, and it's like people aren't seeing it, and and we also get a media thing in here too, right? Like when Cassian gets into prison, they're all like, have you heard what they did to us? And he was like, I didn't hear anything. I think he was at the center of the event that caused it, but he's like, yeah, I haven't heard about this act at all. Like, it doesn't, and it's just like, oh, so there's going to be all these stories. Imagine how easy it would be to squash stories like in a galaxy. Yeah. So then we also hear from Tay at the dinner party saying that the pulling up the funds is proving to be more difficult than he thought. The Empire is staffing more Imperial auditors now, and there's just probably more audits happening of any sort of withdrawal or any account, and so that's just becoming more difficult. That's interesting. So the money, so I guess she's not gonna be able to pull out these family funds. The rebellion's gonna have to you're gonna have to find ways to get more credits fast, and
Gotta love those auditing storylines.
Yeah.
Let me go to
I was into
staffed
it.
up auditor there because that could change the whole face of it, right? It's like, yeah, Mon Mothma's like, well, I can't help like what happens if she can't help financially? How real is she? And she's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm a leader and I just got to get into it. And, maybe that's what drives her back to Luthen, right? Where she's like, okay, I can't get my funds. Where are those, where are those?
It's fascinating to see how many L's the Empire takes, yet they're getting really close to this case with the ISB is really onto a good trail here. And then you're also seeing a lot of these new decrees and the action to add more auditors and sort of like there's a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of actions being taken by the Empire to counter what's going on as well and to counter any sort of rebel insurgency that could happen. And so it's interesting to see the Empire's reaction to a lot of stuff and actually seeing some competent moves from the Empire because, they're going to lose at the end of the day, but it's interesting to see how that system, it takes action and what Palpatine's doing at the top. You kind of can feel that it's Palpatine doing a lot of stuff at the top, and that's the one who's really getting agitated about the sense of control. Right, I'm losing control of the galaxy. These people are rising up. This is happening. That's happening. Yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah. So he's going through fear, and it's just like, a planet. If that event on Space Cancun. I'm sorry, I didn't learn the name of that planet, but what Cassian went through. If that's everywhere, Nymos, yeah. What happened on Nymos is like happening everywhere in the galaxy.
Yeah, that may the public order resentencing decree may have actually been the impetus, may have been like the kind of lighter fluid for the rebellion. Honestly, yeah. People are like, wow, that is brutal sentencing. This shouldn't be allowed because no government previously had ever sentenced people this drastically.
And then everyone already in prison gets their if they doubled, just like that.
Brutal.
Yeah, that is brutal. It was it wasn't like I walked away from this one feeling good. There was and it was a little close. They're just like, hey, this is what fascism looked like. This is what an autocracy is like. For in case you didn't know, and it's a bummer and it's a grind. But we know what happened, so it's going to be a fun journey to get there. Do you want to talk about Saw and
Luthen? Yeah. So then Luthen dials in Sagro Milo?
What?
Sagro Milo? Is that
Sagro Milo? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Have you heard of this planet before?
No, never.
I know you were happy when we just like pan across and benthic two tubes just appears on the screen. I was like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, my poor wife.
Looking good too, by the way.
Oh yeah, looking strapping.
Yeah. This is prime benthic and Saw days, by the way.
Yeah.
Then we
front
go in
watch.
cave.
Yeah, obviously I went crazy. As soon as I saw that, I yelled out, I'm like, benthic two tubes! And my wife was just like, I'm sorry, what? But I love that
he's third favorite Ben.
Yeah. yeah, totally.
So good. Yeah, we get in there. Luthen's trying to sell some parts, but really they're talking about Aldhani right away. And Luthen's asking Saw if Aldhani was him, and Saw's thinking.
I loved that game. I love them just being like, no one wants to admit to anything because then like they would know. They can't, like, they're still at a place where it's like it's too dangerous to tell people what they're going to do because you just get stabbed in the back. And they sort of alluded to it earlier episodes, even with Mon not telling Tay, right, what she's really up to. They're like, all right, we're on the same side, but I don't trust you enough. You're not in the circle of trust where I can tell you what's actually gone down.
Yeah, it felt very similar. That's why I think their stories are kind of cut together in a nice way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of allocating funds for the rebellion, too. It feels like the building of the rebellion when it's goes between Mon and Luthen sort of stories. But that was such fun. Their banter's so great. Like to see Saw have this friend in Luthen is so much fun. Like where we saw Saw last was just so dark and so disparaging, and where we see him now is obviously he's labeled by an extremist by most people, but he's just a radical rebel leader, basically, sort of like the first partisan, the first sort of a person to take arms against the Empire, you know, and he's always kind of just going back and seeing how the Republic operated with the clones and seeing how this all back in the Clone Wars, like he has the long-term story of how it's all what happened here.
Yeah.
Like
and he looks very much on the top of his game, right? He's there in his combat armor. He's got his people. He's got his ethos. He's hunkered down. He's built for this. He loves rebellion. And he loves that this is happening. Like he's in this is peak Saw Gerrera. Now so then we start getting into the like ethos and we get hear different parties. Did I hear correct? Did Saw get labeled anarchists?
Luthen calls Saw an anarchist, basically.
Right.
He goes like anarchy is a seductive, ideology.
Yeah, anarchy is a seductive ideology. But you're right. So I mean, but Saw didn't back down from that. He was like, and
yeah.
I always thought they were a little more, say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism. At least it's an ethos. Like I didn't think he was a nihilist, like. Like straight anarchist. I thought he like had an ethos there to like, fight by any means necessary, like any sort of.
I think he just knows he's fighting something that's like indomitable, and so he's just understanding that he needs to give into oblivion, and so he's just extreme with his fight against the Empire to the point where it's anarchy. It's just causing as much destruction as possible, right? Like that's kind of.
But just to the Empire, I guess, just to the rule of the Empire, I guess, that would be the one thing. He's not just like blowing up random other people. Like he's, but I mean, we know his calling card is.
There are stories where he has used, explosive devices that have injured innocents.
Civilians.
Yeah. So that's
he doesn't care.
And then he's a broken and lost character, by the time we get to Rogue One, I think because of so many of those actions and so many of those sort of like casualties that he inflicted. So he's an interesting character. He's just someone I think that is just so sort of devoted, ardent for his fight that it's everything else. He's just blind to everything else. He needs to take one back for the people and his people specifically. And he really is protective of his crew, the partisans that are with him, it seems. And then Luthen kind of like insults him by being like, but you're living in caves and begging for scraps. Like that was a tough line. That was really hard to watch, honestly. I was like, this is a really sad exchange between two people who have been in this fight for, I guess, as long as anyone else. And it's going so. Like it's Luthen's sitting on 100,000 credits, but it's not a lot. He needs more. Like,
well, it's more than 100,000. I mean, we know he took 200,000. I think there was several million in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think tens of millions is where he's at. But
that's good because you're going to need a lot more than what he's got to start. And it's interesting. It's a fun conversation. They talk about Krieger, and Luthen wants. This is another setup. I think this is another massive setup. It sounds like Luthen wants Saw to meet up with Krieger to provide air support for Krieger, who's running an operation somewhere. And Anto Krieger, I think his name is. Yep. And he's labeled a partisan, I believe. And then Saw labels Maya Pei a neo-Republican, and then someone else a sectorist, and someone else, a galaxy petitionist. Like he's just going off at one point, saying everyone's lost. He doesn't want to work with anyone. And he just kind of like shuts down Luthen and sends him away.
And because I think that was Luthen's real goal. I think the next logical step is getting some of these factions to work together, and then it's a real rebellion, and he can inject money in the right places, and they start getting a movement. And and
I love the part where Saw is like after he starts spouting about all these people, and then he's just like, Luthen, what are you like? I don't know what you are. and then he's like, I'm a coward, and he's like, I'm afraid, like, we're at a point where, like, if we don't act now, like, well, it'll be too late to do anything against the Empire, or whatever he says. It's just so powerful. Like, it's such a good beat. And this is the guy who actually gets everyone to talk to each other, right? Like you said, it's like, this guy basically started the rebellion with the help of Clea. Clea turns out to be vital in this.
Yeah. She might be actually running that shop.
Clea is like proto Leia, like she is running this rebellion. Like she's actually the head of the rebellion.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. She's the one who actually saves Luthen's butt in this episode in terms of just keeping her from answering the call from Bix. And Clea is on point. Like she knows what she's doing. And we get a little bit of Val and Cinta in this episode, just a tiny little sprinkling. Vel and Cinta are
they just happen to be staking out the exact right people. I don't know if they know.
No, I think that was set up. No, that was set up nicely, I think, before.
How did they know anything about Bix? Well, they knew
go
Bix,
back to
right?
Ferrix because that's Cassian Andor's mom still there and all that sort of stuff. So
they only know Bix, right? That's the only person.
It seems like everyone's spying on Bix. Bix can't catch a break in the show, by the way. Poor Bix. Like it's after that first arc, and then now where it's just the further fallout from Aldhani. It's tough.
Yeah. Lost her boyfriend, then had to deal with Cassian, and then it's like, she doesn't even know how many people are on her tail, and then sees her friend we get the whole deal. She's right there, and I can't wait to see what happens next. I mean, I have to imagine is she going to protect Cassian? Like, I don't know.
No,
she doesn't really know anything.
It looks like an interrogation is happening at the end of this episode.
But she doesn't know anything. She could be like, I saw him, and then he said he was going to leave. The end,
No, he gave her credits from the Aldhani heist that are traceable to the Aldhani heist.
Interesting. You're right, because they haven't made that connection yet.
Yeah. So that's traceable to the heist, and then that's not good.
No, that's not good. Totally forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. If they find the credits, then
maybe he exchanged them. I don't know, but I'm guessing they're just too hot to even go exchange. So he just used them. So that'll be interesting. I mean, we covered most of it. Yeah, and the episode kind of ends with Bix going into interrogation, and then and Cassian just still unaware and in that prison. And so that's frustrating. And obviously, it's putting Bix at the center again of the story, which is really great. To me, it's like now Cassian has to go save Bix. Like something has to happen here. Like he has to redeem himself, and especially his friend's eyes, right? Like she's just constantly taking the blame and suffering for his actions. So I think he has to go back and do something there. There has to be a rebellion on Ferrix. You have to get the ISB out. Perrin and Mon Mothma were arranged marriage at 15. That
was exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, that explains a lot now.
There we go.
Yeah, like they've been doing this for probably 20, 30 years of just sort of like living in entirely different worlds. But
because she even says one forgets to savor the familiar at one point. That line.
There's entendre in every line. There's like every time Mon Mothma speaks, she's saying two things.
It's like subtext. It's just constant subtext between them. Perrin, not so much. I guess he's always delivering some snide remark. But she does remark that Perrin was sort of a fiery political activist when he was younger or something. That's what I got.
Yeah.
But who knows? That could have been your real nihilism right there. I don't know what Perrin was probably into as a youth, but
it'd be cool if they could do a Perrin redemption arc and sort of like somehow he finds something.
I think that's actually what might happen, honestly. I think Mon Mothma might have something terrible happen to her family, honestly.
Oh, really? Like if he was like, it came out and he was just like, if you were just honest with me, I would have backed you in whatever you were going to do or something, I don't know. We'll see. Or they get captured.
Or he's complacent with high society and she's outed as a sort of rebel sympathizer, and then he turns on her with their daughter, and keeps the daughter with him. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that seems
that.
like the most likely outcome is like he protects himself and his daughter and just rolls over. But I mean, even for that, he would still, under this empire, they would still both be punished just for being in proximity, you know. All right, we want to do the roundup.
Let's do it.
This episode, great. So yeah, now we're just gonna go hit some bullet points. Grant's come up with this framework, and we're gonna touch every episode with these because they've all got these fun games. Grant, take it away.
All right. Let's do favorite scene. Favorite scene this episode.
Oh,
do you have a favorite scene?
Yeah,
I know. I mean, I can.
Yeah, I feel like the scene with Luthen Rail and Saw Gerrera is one of the best scenes of the season.
Yeah, I think I concur. I think it's my favorite scene as well. I can't.
The star power.
Saw again, and then Stellan Skarsgård and Forrest Whitaker just crushing, crushing. But a good second to that, I think, is the Andy Serkis introduction. I think just the bright white workroom, that aesthetic, being introduced to that part of the prison, and then Andy Serkis to come out as the floor manager. That was like, that was exciting. So
there's like a lighting thing with Star Wars that separates it from like THX 1138 and other like sci-fi. It's like the whites are extra bright. It's like a tick below oversaturation, like where the overhead lighting is super bright and it has its own feel in those spaces, and it definitely feels like Star Wars. But it's scenes we've seen before, but the architecture and the outfits are amazing. Yeah,
I love that stuff. Favorite line? Did you have a favorite line in this episode?
I think Luthen Rail's "I'm a coward."
That whole speech, that little speech he gets into.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
Because I think a lot of there's obviously a lot of parallels to real world, but so it hits,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that was the most telling thing, because we're trying to figure out what Luthen is and where his role is, but. I mean, I look at him as like a facilitator, but he's not fighting on the front lines, but he knows it's a job that needs to be done. He's trying to arrange these like bodies of power that are being oppressed into one Voltron.
Yeah, and then that line carrying through all the way to like, we'll look at you living in caves, like begging for scrap. That sort of like cutting line at the end was just delivered perfectly. Like, what an incredible scene. Even just Saw, going off about everyone's sort of political following or leaning. That was awesome. I got to say, oppression breeds rebellion is a great line. Oppression breeds rebellion. Yeah, is a great line.
He said that a lot. They're really hitting that home, like when he talks to Mon, and he's just like, "This is, Yeah,
that's a great one.
It's a radical idea.
I just like when Deidre Romero is doing her, the wish list is so great when you hear her wish list get read off, Wolf Yularen reads that off. But I just like when she's like, I want to drill down on Ferrix, drill down on Andor, and get a hunt started. I was like, that was just like, was that the casting? Was it like that the liner casting for that role? Because it was amazing. And like, she just lived and breathed, a sort of imperial intelligence operative, in that moment. And I thought that was just so good.
Just the way they elevated the dialogue for the ISB agents when they talk to anyone, but especially themselves, you really feel like, okay, this is the lexicon that was built in the higher ups of the Empire. You keep everything short. You're to the point. You don't dilly dally. You don't, like flip flop on ideas or pontificate. You just like you give your mission and you stand behind it, or else you look weak. And they've just done a really good job. All those scenes with the ISB agents and like Major Penagaz and all that are like Partagaz. They're all so sharp. They're all just like razor sharp and fun to listen to.
Yeah. The whole part of gas part at the end there is pretty good too. So
Yeah.
what little we know is troubling. That whole part where he goes off.
Yeah.
So good.
And he's like, all right, I'll take it from here. He comes into pinch hit. He's like, I'll carry this over the line.
Yeah.
And he's just like,
Ginger Miro has convinced me of their reports about this.
Yeah.
This being
he's like, and needless to say, what little we know.
Yeah.
It's
troubling. Yeah.
That's the best line. That's the best line.
So good. Yeah.
Why did I waste it? That's the one.
Yeah. Best dressed or best drip
in
the episode.
Drip of the day.
Drip of the day. If you...
gosh, there was I feel like maybe I'll give it to Tay. This time around.
Tay got some.
No one else had great drip in this.
Really? I was.
We got prisoners.
I was gonna give one to the bad guys. I was gonna say Imperial prison guard with sort of like rubber boots, snowboard boots.
All right, the snowboard boots. Yeah.
I was like, I'm into that. I was like, this is great.
Okay, that's a really good one.
Their outfits are so like 80s and like they look like little ski outfits with little white patch marks. It's so fun. Like, those jumpsuits look awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously horrible people, but
Right. No, but you're right. That was the best standout outfit.
It was cool. I like
it. Yeah, it was definitely the thing. I think the Chandrillans, I just like want to give props because they have a style, and it's wearing like 4 robes on top of 5 robes.
Yeah.
It's like they just wear 1,000 gis, and they just like all layer up on each other until they're like these really samurai-esque characters in white.
That's how you enjoy some squigs. You just get your gi and enjoy some squigs.
Her daughter was disgusted. She's like,
I know, she was like, ew.
squigs.
But then Mon Mothma like didn't put any squigs in her champagne.
No. Yeah. And she didn't even drink it. She doesn't drink.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What else you got?
Let's do best new character or best name. Best new name, best new character. You can either or.
Best new name or best new? I mean, the best new character is gotta be Kino Loy. Let me see if I get a.
Kino Loy is probably best new character. Yeah. Best new name, Jembach. One of the guys at the work table's name is Jembach, and I think that's a great name.
Oh yeah, Jembach, Brian Bovell.
Yeah,
Jembach. Even though it's so better than Ham. They have a guy named Ham.
Ham is pretty good. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, it's like a little.
Are you taking Ham as best
reminiscence of pork? It's close to Jack Porkins, so yeah, I'll go with Ham.
Olaf is up there.
Yeah, Olaf is good too. Zal with an X.
Yeah. I think Kino Loy best new character for sure.
Yeah, come on. Yeah,
I mean, Andy Serkis makes an appearance. It's like, hello.
Yeah. Though I did like the guy that you're saying from the other from Rogue One. He was like they tell a whole story about someone in like 10 frames. They just show someone like, for a minute, and the way they showed that character, he you could tell there's something about that guy that's special. Maybe it was they're just like, hey, he's the guy from Rogue One, but like he gives the sage, it's pulled straight from The Wire. It's like you only do 2 days.
Yeah.
You only do 2 days. The day you came in, the day you leave. He's like double, triple your sentence. Don't worry.
There's always the guy in prison who just like holds you against a wall and whispers like real talk in your ear.
Yeah. You only do 2 days.
That has to happen in any prison scenario.
Totally.
And Melshi turns out to be that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Melshi's a great reveal too because he's obviously if you know the Rogue One characters and you that's there. Yeah.
All right.
Most memeable moment.
Okay. Why don't you go first on this, Grant? Because I know you got one in your
All right. I think the obvious one, first of all, the one I want the most is Andy Serkis saying hot floors, and however anyone can find a way to use that, I'm just to see. But just him yelling hot floors, looking down at the ground. I'd love to see that used. But I think get her, like the Imperial officer shouting "get her" across the streets of Ferrix when he sees Bix Kayleen. Yeah. I think that is the ultimate gif of all gifs.
That's definitely a good one, man. Yeah, they'll definitely use that again.
Get her. Go back and listen to that. It's
it was legendary. It was, we see the guy and then it's like an L cut and we hear it as we're like panning across like her running or like a different trooper, but it's an amazing voice. It's like,
yeah. You got one.
It's amazing. That's the one, man.
Perrin dropping the squigs in the glass. I could see people.
Yeah.
That one out.
Yeah. He's like, I'll have her squig. Oh.
Yeah. And then a Saw Gerrera, they are lost. I mean, that's endlessly usable.
Yeah. They're lost. They I mean, I'm sure there's a million from that. But yeah, sorry, I didn't
No, get her, I think's the one, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the one that's make it out of this episode. But yeah, so that's a fun roundup.
Cool, man.
I think that's it. I think that's our Andor coverage this week.
Yeah, definitely. Be sure this week we're also doing an episode of Tales of the Jedi, so check out that episode as well. And yeah, please, whatever outlet you're on right now, if you could please give us a 5-star review, whether it be Spotify, Apple, whatever, would be a huge help, and we'd greatly appreciate it.
Deeply appreciate
it. Yeah.
On the rebellion.
Definitely.
Starts here.
We'll talk to you next week. Back with Adam in tow. We miss him. And yeah, until then, have a great one, and may the Force be with you.
This is Grex Kondak signing off. For the latest breaking news, follow @CoreWorldNews on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, and good night.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.